A white-haired woman hands out a paper stating that she quits. The black-haired man asks what this is. She says it is a resignation letter. He thinks to himself. The woman thinks to herself that she will not give up. She will definitely quit her job. The man tears the paper apart and the woman becomes shocked. The man says, Haley, quitting might be difficult. Article 5, Paragraph 6 of the contract. Limited to inability to work due to natural disaster, accident, or illness. The contract can be cancelled. Haley thinks to herself how he remembers all the clauses. The man holds her back and says both legs intact, straight back, rosy cheeks, even glossy hair. None of those apply. The woman gets all flustered and says not to weaken his resolve. The man says so they should have been careful with the contract. The woman thinks to herself that it is frustrating she was determined to quit today. The man asks if she is okay. She thinks to herself why this emperor is so handsome. A few months ago a maid calls Haley out saying His Majesty is rampaging again. The maid says this is not the time for this. Quick, get the medicine. Haley becomes confused and asks who she is. The maid says it is her, Cecilia. Is she experiencing memory loss again? With Lord Laventia absent, how can she afford to be absent-minded? Haley thinks to herself what is happening right now. The Emperor. Who is Laventia again? The maid grabs her hand saying no time to dawdle, it is urgent. Haley says wait a minute, could this be the possession she has heard about? But she has only read 1 or 2 novels. Haley asks if could it be she has forgotten His Majesty's name. The maid looks back and asks if she has really forgotten everything. The maid says Demion Lysiclares. And Haley, she is working as the assistant pharmacist at the Imperial Palace. Haley becomes startled with the Emperor's name and asks is it Demion? One day when she opened her eyes she was in the worn-out BL novel. The world of the novel where Demion Lysiclares, the Emperor of the Empire and the protagonist resides, he is an Esper with the ability called Lord's Protection. Because he often uses his ability, Demion who is prone to rampaging. One day he falls in love with the guy Joshua. After that every night using his ability this and that. But still of all things to possess the extra of that novel. And to become the dying pharmacist of the Imperial Palace. The maid calls out Haley as she tries to crawl away. She grabs her shoulder and says there is no time. The title is disappearing. Haley, all scared, thinks to herself that Emperor is scary. She has this image of the Emperor saying could she not make the antidote? Kill the author. Give poison to Joshua. Throw him to the beasts. Haley cries saying that she is destined to die because of those who tried to kill the Emperor's lover. What should she do now? It would have been better to possess an irredeemable villainess who cannot be reborn. Haley gets to the room all nervous with a medicine in her hand, thinking to herself that judging by the use of the suppressant it seems she has not met Joshua yet. Haley takes a deep breath and says alright, let's adjust to not provoke too much. Haley with a smile walks in saying Your Majesty. She has brought the medicine. Haley gets annoyed that there was no response. Haley says again that she brought the medicine. Haley says to just forget it. Let's just leave the medicine and go. Haley says excuse her for bothering when he is not feeling well. She looks up thinking to herself that with a personality like that his face must be quite scary. Haley becomes shocked. As the Emperor says right now bring it here. Haley thinks to herself how handsome and gives him the medicine. The Emperor holds his hand and Haley asks if he is okay. The Emperor holds her hand and brings her close. Haley becomes confused and says to herself that no matter how distracted he is this okay? She thinks that no, she prefers it this way. Not that. Haley says Your Majesty, snap out of it. The Emperor embraces her and she thinks to herself that it seems like he has no intention of letting go. It seems there is no need for a hot stone with a warm person around. At this rate she might fall asleep too. The scene cuts to the Emperor saying Slack. Slack says yes, Your Majesty. He says to bring that pharmacist from yesterday. This is the story of a turbulent possession of a true-faced lover even in a life-threatening situation. The maid yells out saying if she is out of her mind. She fell asleep in His Majesty's bedroom and got dragged out. It is a good thing the medicine worked well. What if His Majesty had woken up? Haley says she did not even realize it. She holds her head and says why on earth she did that. She almost died just one day after being possessed. She cannot keep living like this constantly on edge. After being kicked out of the bedroom last night, she searched the workshop. There were records of medicine formulation, a murderous workload, and a schedule. But there was no information related to Haley, only work-related information. The maid thinks to herself if this woman is a complete workaholic. She says Haley surely not still, her memory has not returned. The maid thinks to herself that this woman did she lose her memory. If that is the case then it is a good opportunity for her. Haley stands up saying yes, she cannot remember anything at all. The maid asks what kind of experiment she conducted that made her memory completely disappear. She had a feeling she would cause an accident someday. She thinks to herself to please let it work. The maid says then she will have to tell her a few things. If she continues to stay in that state, it will be a big problem. First, Ms. Haley is currently working under Lord Robincha. Lord Robincha is His Majesty's personal pharmacist, and now she has gone to the Western continent to obtain herbs. The next story she will tell her is related to Ms. Haley's life. Haley thinks to herself saying what? Something related to her life. The maid says that the place has had excellent pharmacists, but their ends were not good. Most of them were assassins targeting His Majesty, or they were bribed by nobles who wanted to connect with guides, posing threats. So if Miss Haley in her current state makes a medicine, she could become a significant threat to His Majesty. Haley holds her cloth, saying to herself that this is a big problem. She has no relevant knowledge, so how can she make medicine? Until the return of Lord Robincha, she has to endure as much as possible. A man walks in saying, "Pharmacist." His Majesty is calling for her. Haley thinks it is because this is a BL world, so all the men are good looking here. Haley hides behind the maid asking a summon. The maid says it is okay. Just do not upset His Majesty and she will be fine. Haley thinks to herself that she is glad that at least there is a good person beside her. Haley says thank you for telling her. The maid with a smile says her welcome. If something happens to Miss Haley, they need to find a new replacement. Because that is even more bothersome, so do will. She pushes Haley off, saying now off she goes. Haley becomes startled and scared and asks herself if she can survive. The scene cuts to the Emperor making a fist, saying that has he ever felt this refreshed before? Maybe this time he will be able to get his hands on the perfect suppressant. The Emperor gets a flashback on someone saying, "But Damien, do not trust anyone. You must never trust anyone." The Emperor thinks to himself that alright, first he needs to carefully assess what kind of person she is. The butler says, "Your Majesty." He has brought the pharmacist. The Emperor thinks to himself that she finally came. Meanwhile, Haley thinks to herself that she must not make the same mistake as yesterday. Get a grip. The Emperor turns and says, "Welcome, Haley." Haley blushes and thinks to herself, saying that he looks even better during the day. The Emperor says that he heard that she lived in the border area of Osland before coming to the palace. Haley sits down and says, yes, that is right." The Emperor says that last night was one of the most impressive nights he has experienced since ascending the throne. It was the most impressive night. So he has become more curious about her. The Emperor sits down and says, how about it, can she tell him more about herself? Haley gets a little nervous, asking what he is exactly curious about. The Emperor says that she has not been in the palace for long. During that time, about her past and background. It would be good if she could explain it step by step. Also her relationships during the Palace Academy. Haley stands up saying, hey. She would like to sincerely answer His Majesty, but actually, she worked too hard on research last night. Haley thinks to herself, oh well, who cares? Haley looks down and says that she has lost her memory. So she is of no help to His Majesty. The Emperor glares at her and Haley nervously says, or so she thought. It seems like her memory is slowly coming back. Haley remembers the maid saying that if she upsets His Majesty, she will die. Ms. Haley. The Emperor turns and says then, does she not remember the formula for the suppressant she gave him yesterday? Haley says no, but she will somehow regain her memory. The Emperor says that he will give her a week. Haley, all confused, asks a week. The Emperor says that he heard she was known for her intelligence. Her memory will return soon. Haley gets all scared and says to herself, surely. The Emperor looks at her saying, a week. Can she create the suppressant in that time? In Haley's head, when the Emperor said if she can make a runaway suppressor within a week, right? Haley says no, absolutely impossible. Haley thinks to herself that she should have said that. She cannot sleep. What kind of trouble is this? Still, if he catches the medicine bottle, it is amazing. The body automatically remembers and moves, thank God. It was discovered that the medicines made in that way were surprisingly effective. She found out that she is a wealthy person. Why cannot they make an important inhibitor? The books start falling on her and Haley gets startled. Haley says it almost spilled, but spots a piece of paper and she asks what this is. She opens it and sees it is about how to make an inhibitor. It is not. It is a banquet. Fog. Leave no trace. If it is fog, is he talking about the poison that has all traces of its medicinal properties disappearing like an anthurium when it hibernates? In Bridles of Obsession, Going worked very hard to discover the identity of the drug. Haley says no way. Are they possessed as a spy for the Imperial Palace? Survival difficulty increases rapidly, and Haley burns the page. And she says to herself that there is not much time left until the week. Whatever it is, let's live with herself first. The next day, a butler says thank you for your hard work during his visit. Lavincha notices someone dashing towards him. It was Haley saying, "Why is he here now, Lavincha?" She missed him so much. Haley thinks to herself that she finally got her hands on the recipe for the medicine. Haley says that if she knew, she would at least make a welcome card. Lavincha throws his clothes at her and tells her to go wash it, put her luggage in order. Haley thinks to herself that what is with his cold attitude. Lavincha says that she said she lost her memory, so it seems like she is an idiot. And Her Majesty took his medicine right. Haley thinks to herself that they are in big trouble. It seems like they are complete enemies. Haley says yes, that is right. She served His Majesty well on behalf of Lavincha. Lavincha says, "You, Majesty, I am anxious to be seen." Lavincha says that if she does something useless like this again in the future, then she will not be able to get through safely. The maid is asking why he is asking Haley to do this chore. While Haley's mouth is wide open, Haley whimpers and says why she did not tell her that her superior's personality is a bit of a bitch. The maid chuckles and says that she thought current Haley would like it. The maid says actually Lavincha has a sense of entitlement. Because Haley's skills are so good, she is always anxious because she is afraid of losing her seat. But just like Lavincha said, she has become a fool and an idiot. If this is the case, will not things gradually get better? Haley gets annoyed, saying this is really encouraging support. Haley thinks to herself that there was such a setting between the two. But what can she do? She needs to get some medicine. The one who is disappointed has to bend down and go in. Lavincha asks why there is so much dust in the lab. Clean it up right away. Haley says that she just finished doing laundry. Lavincha says to sort out all the herbs here and dry them until evening. Haley gets annoyed and thinks to herself that she is not an assistant pharmacist, just a handyman. Lavincha asks why she is dissatisfied. Haley says that does not exist. She thinks to herself that let's wait just a little longer for the recipe. Lavincha yells at Haley, telling her that he told her to clean up here. Haley says yes. Lavincha says again, Haley, it has been since he told her to put some herbs in it, but it is still the same. Haley says that she will finish it by night. Lavincha yells at her, asking if she is crazy. What if he confuses the medicine bottle? Haley thinks to herself that yes, she can survive this arrangement as long as she does not cross the line. Lavincha tells her to stir this for 10 hours. Haley thinks to herself if he is crossing the line right now. Lavincha asks why there is no answer. Haley says that she was thinking about how she could stir it. She thinks to herself, what do they do? She needs to figure out the recipe quickly. There are already only 3 days left, right? Lavincha says to open the window. The heat is annoying. Haley says yes, and as she opens it she thinks to herself that the weather is even better than she thought. Lavincha says the day has become quite warm. Haley thinks to herself why he seems to be in a good mood today. Haley says, hey, Lavincha. Actually, she received an order from His Majesty to make a runaway suppressant. Lavincha with a glare looks at her, asking to you. Haley says, all of course, how could an assistant like her make medicine? Her job is to personally deliver medicine to the smart Lavincha. Lavincha thinks to himself and says then let's try to make it in 2 days. Haley, all happy, says that she will prepare the ingredients he needs. Lavincha says to prepare as written here. And Haley says yes. She thinks to herself that yes, she finally has success. She has surprisingly simple personality. Haley says that she has one more question. Lavincha says what? Haley says does she really have to stir this for 10 hours? 10 hours later it is nighttime and Haley trembles in exhaustion, saying it is finally over. They really asked her to do 10 hours. Still she is glad she was able to get the suppressant somehow. She almost missed the deadline. She looks up and thinks to herself, who is it at this hour? It is the Emperor, and she says, oh my god, he is the Emperor. Haley hides and says if she runs into each other will they first look for the medicine, she has not finished it yet. Haley, all shivering, prays that he just passes by. The Emperor asks what she is doing here. The Emperor says nice to see her here. Haley stays quiet because of how speechless she is. Haley laughs it off and says that she was just admiring the floor pattern for a moment. Even the smallest details of the Imperial Palace are truly beautiful. As expected, Her Majesty's aesthetic sense is truly outstanding. The Emperor says well, the Imperial Palace was built hundreds of years ago. It seems like their ancestors had good sense. The Emperor leans in, saying by the way, for some reason, he felt like she was avoiding him. Is the inhibitor preparation progressing well? The Emperor asks how the suppressant preparation is going well. Haley says of course, it is progressing smoothly. She has to go back to her research, so she will take her leave. Haley turns and leaves, but the Emperor calls her out. He says there is a National Foundation Day banquet at the place tomorrow. Would she like to attend if she is available? Haley turns and asks a banquet. She thinks to herself that then she will have to see him again tomorrow. She is still uncomfortable. The Emperor says there will be rare foods prepared, to which Haley says yes, she will definitely attend. The butler walking in saying Your Majesty, to which the Emperor says that he must go now. Haley says yes, take care on her way out. She looks at both of them and gets flustered, saying to herself that there is such a gracious combination. Since she came here, her eyes have reached the heavenly realm. Moreover, being invited to a palace party. This is turning out to be a pretty good possession. The Emperor chuckles to himself, and the butler asks why he is suddenly laughing. The Emperor sorry, he just thought of that pharmacist, especially the top of the head. The butler asks the top of the head. The Emperor asks how should he put it. Haley is the first person to avoid him with their whole body. The Emperor smiles and says it makes him want to keep provoking her. The scene cuts in front of Lavencha's pharmacy. Haley thinks to herself that she experimented all night and she is so tired. What kind of trouble awaits her today? Haley smells something and asks, what is this smell? Flowers have bloomed. It is totally spring. It is such a nice day, yet she has to work. It is too sad. She tells herself to just endure a little longer. There is a banquet this evening. Let's start working now. A man in a black robe shoves her off and walks off. Haley gets annoyed and says, hey, if he hits someone, he should apologize. Where does he keep his eyes really? Lavencha, who is that person who just left? Lavencha was seen glaring at a pouch, and Haley asks Lavencha. Lavencha, he is a herbalist. He urgently delivered some herbs that were running low. Haley asks herself what was that? It looked like he was hiding something. He did not even notice when she came in. Lavencha says that she should visit the infirmary. Haley asks the infirmary. Lavencha says to just deliver the regular medicines. Haley asks where it is, to which Lavencha says near the north gate of the palace. Haley says so where is she? She came without thinking, but is not this place too big? How is she supposed to find it when she only said it is near the north gate? She spots someone and says that she should ask that person. Haley waves and says excuse her knight. Can he help her find the way? He turns and Haley thinks to herself that he is incredibly handsome. Even the extras here are handsome. Haley asks if he knows where the infirmary is. She thinks to herself that why is he not saying anything? Haley nervously says he does not know. The blonde says the infirmary. He will guide her. Haley says yes, thank you. She asks herself if he was lost in thoughts. The knight says this way. And Haley says wow, this scenery is really beautiful. The knight says around this time spring flowers are in full bloom, making it a spectacular sight. But this year the flowers were made to bloom with magic. All the trees were diseased due to pests. Haley asks if that is possible too. She thinks to herself if that is why the flowers definitely look like flowers, but they do not have any scent. The knight says they have arrived, this is the place. Haley bows down thanking him. The knight says then he will see her later. Haley thinks to herself that she would like that. She gets flustered as she tells him to take care on his way. A voice behind her says, hey Haley, did she bring the medicine? Haley says yes. Is he Mr. Callium? He says that she is speaking as if she saw him for the first time. Haley says there was an accident during the experiment. Her memory is still fuzzy. The old man says that looks like she has become just like that bastard's assistant, losing her mind. Haley asks if he is talking about Mr. Lavencha. The old man says yes. That guy is naturally lazy and greedy. He never makes medicine on time, and he is so mean, always looking down on others. She already knows, but he is as sly as a snake. In this palace she has to be wary of such people. Haley trembles and says really. She completely agrees with that while making a joyful face. She thinks to herself that finally she has met someone who understands her. The old man sits down and says really. In that case. He tells her to sit down and says that she has worked hard, so take a break. Haley thinks to herself that it seems like this old man likes her too. The scene cuts to Haley excitedly walking in the pharmacy saying that she is back. What should she do now? She thinks to herself that after chatting a lot she feels refreshed. Lavencha says to go and organize the herbal warehouse before she goes in. Haley says Ms. Lavencha is that the suppressant. As expected, Ms. Lavencha is the best. She thinks to herself why she is only doing things she likes today. Did her relationship with Sesha improve as she said? Then now she can go to the palace banquet without worry. Haley thinks to herself that wow, this is really extravagant. As expected from the Imperial Palace banquet, the scale is huge. But what she is really interested in is, Haley drools as she says to wait for her, high-class delicacies. Here she comes. She is getting rewarded for all her hard work. A woman says if they heard the news, that person is attending the banquet today. This time, he defeated the northern barbarians and returned victorious. He must have come back looking more gallant. Haley thinks to herself who they're talking about instead of enjoying all this delicious food. They say, oh look, there he comes. Grand Duke Ares. Haley thinks to herself that person is the one who guided her earlier. He was not just an ordinary knight but the Grand Duke. And the name Ares. He starts using Joshua and then falls for him. The Duke says nice to see her again, Pharmacist. Did she complete her task well? Haley drops her food and stutters thinking to herself what on earth she has done. Haley bows down saying she is truly sorry, Your Highness, not recognizing him and acting so rudely. The Duke says it is okay, guiding someone is not that difficult. She thinks to herself if he is forgiving her. The Duke says still, she must be a bit upset, right? To think there is someone in the palace who does not recognize him. Haley says that she is doomed, she has caught the attention of the mastermind. A butler comes in saying that the Grand Duke, the Empress Dowager, is calling for him. The Duke says that he will be there shortly. The Duke says that he is just kidding by the way she has something on her lips. If she does not mind, please use this. Haley says thank you and the Duke says well then he will take his leave. Haley thinks to herself that does giving her a handkerchief mean he wants to see her again. She thought he would be scary because he is the mastermind, but he is surprisingly kind. She has safely passed this crisis. Now she can properly enjoy the banquet. A glass breaks and Haley thinks to herself, what is that noise? A woman yells out that someone has collapsed. Quickly call the palace physician. The woman asks did she just collapse on her own? The other woman says that she drank too much. Could it be because the corset is too tight? Haley thinks to herself, what is this ominous feeling? Another woman says that she is feeling a bit dizzy because of the scent too. The other woman says, is it because of the Zenoria flowers? Yes, me too. Even though they are in full bloom, this year the scent is particularly strong. Haley thinks to herself that since a while ago she thought this smell was the scent of Zenoria flowers. She thought it was the noble's perfume, but because during the day this year they made the flowers bloom with magic. Even though they were surrounded by Zenoria trees, there was no smell. She definitely smelled this scent in front of the pharmacy this morning. If magically bloomed flowers do not have scent, then what was this smell? Come to think of it, the letter says banquet, mist, leave, no trace. So could this be the scent of mist? Right, they have read about it in the original work. The characteristic of the poison called mist is a sweet floral scent. Villains often mixed it into food to secretly give it to Joshua. Haley asks could it be in her food too? She looks at it and says luckily there is no poison in the food. Then it must be in the wine. Probably all the wine at the banquet is poisoned. She must inform His Majesty quickly. Haley spots him and says there he is. She hears voices saying huh? Who is that beside His Majesty? Besides Lord Slack? No way that person is. Laventia. What is he handing over? Laventia gave out the wine and Haley says no, stop. She sprints and when the Emperor was about to take a sip, Haley screams, Your Majesty. He must not drink that. Laventia asks what on the earth she is doing. Haley yells out that it is poison. All the drinks at the banquet are poisoned. That sweet scent is because of it. There is a poison with a strong floral scent and its effects appear gradually. They must stop the banquet before it is too late. Laventia says what a ridiculous thing to say. People start collapsing and they keep on checking on each other. The Emperor says that it seems what Haley said was true. Is not that right, Slack? Slack says yes, Your Majesty. He will inform the guests and arrest everyone who prepared the food and drinks. Haley says wait a moment. She thinks she knows who the culprit is. The culprit is Laventia's superior. As she points at him, Laventia says is she drunk? What nonsense. Haley says the item hidden in a hurry this morning. It must have been the ingredient for the poison. In that case she is sure even the suppressant made for her contains that poison. His hands will probably have a lingering floral scent. When mixing medicine the scent always sticks to your hands. Slack says that he will check his hands. Laventia gasps and screams that she tried to kill him. To take this place. The Emperor says Slack, take him away, to which he says yes. Laventia yells to please spare him. This is a setup. Your Majesty. The scene cuts to the Emperor calling out Haley and saying she seems to know a lot about this poison. Is there an antidote? Haley says that she is sorry, but she only knows about the poison, not the antidote. The Emperor sighs and says things have gotten complicated. Then they must make the person who created the poison talk. She goes get a truth serum from the pharmacy. Haley asks where she kept it. She thinks she saw it around here somewhere. Found it. She needs to bring it quickly before it is too late. A black man in a robe grabs her mouth and tells her to stay still. The man in the dark robe tells her to use this medicine to kill Lavintia. Haley thinks to herself, what Lavintia? The man in the black robe says that if she fails, her life will not be spared. Haley says that she just needs to survive. She says she understands. The man lets her go and says, remember this. As he escapes, Haley thinks to herself why this world is so harsh. Luckily, she didn't lose the truth serum. She says, wait, they both look incredibly similar? She thinks to herself that it's to the point where she can't tell the difference even if she deceives them. But whether it's the Emperor's words or the truth serum, the result is the same. Death. What should she do? The scene cuts to a dark prison where Haley is getting led by a butler. He says, Your Majesty, he has brought the pharmacist. The Emperor asks if she brought the truth serum. Haley thinks to herself that, my goodness, are those the same people from the banquet earlier? The Emperor says, Haley? And Haley says, yes, here it is. Haley is very nervous as the Emperor holds his face and makes him chug the serum. He asks if he made the poison. Lavintia says yes, the truth serum is working. It's a confession system. The Emperor tells Haley to get ready to write this down. Haley says yes, while Lavintia says the list of ingredients of the antidote is seaweed, Yulin root, paparia bark. Haley thinks to herself, right, they need to save people first, so this should be correct. Lavintia says it's the venom of the Lanza spider. The Emperor asks who is behind him, to which Lavintia tries to bite his tongue. The Emperor holds his mouth and asks what is he doing, biting his tongue and die? The Emperor says to Slack to gag him. They'll interrogate him later. Slack says, but the effect will wear off. The Emperor says they use the truth serum because the situation is urgent, but normally regular interrogation would suffice. Haley thinks to herself that surely means torture. The Emperor says to leave the rest to other pharmacists. We should return. Haley asks we? It's nighttime and the Emperor says that she must be quite shaken by today's events. Haley thinks to herself, why is she walking alongside His Majesty? Haley says that she had never experienced anything like this before. The Emperor says that there will be more surprises to come. She is now his person, so she'll be involved in all sorts of incidents. Haley thinks to herself, my person? What does he mean by that? She doesn't want to live a more spectacular life than now. The Emperor says that she did well bringing the truth serum instead of the poison. Haley thinks to herself, what? How does His Majesty know about the poison? She yells out, no way. The Emperor says yes, he sent the assailant. While she went to fetch the medicine, he set up Slack. Haley asks, why would he do that? The Emperor says because he can't let just anyone near him. She thinks to herself, if he's insane? If she hesitated a little more, she could have ended up like Lovitia. The Emperor puts his hand on her shoulder and says to consider it a small test for his safety. He hopes she understands. Haley's face switches and says, of course. She thinks to herself, well, it's already over, so what can she do? The Emperor says that they need to discuss the terms. Haley asks what terms. He says, as she knows, they lost their dedicated pharmacist today, so they need to fill that position. Rest well today, and come to the office tomorrow morning. Congratulations on her promotion, Haley. Shall they go? Haley thinks to herself, oh no. She still hasn't made the suppressant yet. The scene cuts to the cell where Lavintia says, damn it. From the beginning he knew there was a certain risk in making the person promised him wealth and glory once the job was done. He had no reason to refuse. But that wench he considered disposable stabbed him in the back. Is he going to die like this? The man in a robe says that he's in bad shape. Lavintia looks up and says, Khan, get him out of here. That woman betrayed them. He'll go catch her right away. The Khan tells him to calm down. By dawn, he'll be out of here. For his throat to his lips they're all cracked. Lavintia says that's what he thought for someone with such a great backing. The Khan tells him to not worry, just endure through tonight. Lavintia says yes. He must get him out of here. The man in the robe walks away saying he keeps his promises. The man asks how did it go? The man takes off the mask. It's the Grand Duke Ares. The man asks if he's really going to get him out. He no longer has any utilities. The Duke says that he will keep his promise. He didn't say he'd be alive. The man bows down and says he'll take care of the rest. The Duke says he just needs to bring the canteen. By now he has probably ended his own life. The scene cuts to Haley thinking to herself that she accidentally did a good job. She somehow gained trust now she's on the verge of a promotion. The Emperor says he wonders if the tea suits her taste. She thinks to herself, why is the Majesty personally serving tea? The Emperor says, oh dear, he had prepared the tea in advance but it has gone cold. He stands up and says, wait a moment. Haley was shocked and thought to herself if he's going to brew the tea by himself. Haley holds his hand and says it's okay. Even if she freezes to death, she likes cold tea. She loves it. Haley says to herself, oh no, and says she's sorry. She dared to touch His Majesty's hand. The Emperor says, well, it's fine. Has she thought about it yet? About becoming his exclusive pharmacist? Haley says she will just follow the standard labor laws. The Emperor says she can be a bit greedier. She doesn't spare anything for his people. Her salary will be doubled, and how much does she want as a signing bonus? Haley thinks to herself, what should she do? She doesn't even know the currency unit here. In that case, there's no choice. She'll have to use the universal language. Haley says then one large note will do. The Emperor asks, isn't that too little? Let's make it 5 notes. Haley says yes, that's not bad. She thinks to herself, how much is 1 note worth? The Emperor says, let's write the contract now. Did she bring her seal? Haley says, oh yeah, here it is. The Emperor says that she can sign here. Haley says yes. Why the rush? She thinks to herself, wait a minute, she hasn't read the contract yet. Haley asks, what is this? The Emperor says he'll send her a copy later. Haley says, a copy? Slack walks in a hurry saying, Your Majesty. Slay seems to have urgent business. The Emperor says that they have a meeting to attend. See you next time. Looking forward to working with you, Haley. Haley asks herself what's happening. It feels like she has been tricked into a fraudulent contract. The Emperor asks Slack what's the matter. Slack says Lavintia is dead. He took his own life again. The Emperor says that they are quick to sever ties. Slack says the poison spread in the banquet hall was not lethal. It seems it was just a simple warning terror attack. The one who ordered the poison and the mastermind are likely the same. The type of poison and the method of handling it are almost identical. The Emperor says a secret worth protecting with one's life. It doesn't seem like the recruited ones are very loyal or devoted. Should they consider mental brainwashing? He thinks to himself that, or is there an ancient magic method? But that's a wild guess. Slack says they should have pushed harder when they fed him the truth serum. The Emperor says it was a bit troublesome back then. Someone was trembling. Slack nervously thinks to himself, who was trembling? A thought clicks and he asks if she's talking about the pharmacist. The Emperor says she was so pale, how could he leave her there? Slack asks that he could have sent her back alone. The Emperor says the night road is quite rough. By the way, give her a copy of the contract. Slack reads the contract and says an exclusive pharmacist, he really plans to keep her by his side. The Emperor says there's something he wants to check. And it's quite amusing. She reacts so strongly to anything said. Of course, the most interesting thing is, that might be her ability. The Emperor starts hysterically laughing and Slack asks if he's okay. Slack thinks to himself that he's already close to a rampage. His body temperature is rising. The Emperor says, really? It's a truly disgusting disease. Slack, while walking in the hallway, thinks to himself that fortunately His Majesty soon regains stability. But they don't know when the symptoms might reappear. By the way, why did he suddenly decide to keep her by his side? He doesn't know if he's going to keep her. Slack knocks the door and Haley tells him to come in. Haley says, it's Mr. Slack. Slack says that she is already moving her things to the new pharmacy. Haley says yes, Sesha told her. She said it's a promotion benefit. Slack asks, isn't Lady Sesha helping her? Slack says Lady Sesha has now been assigned as Lady Haley's personal maid. Haley, all shocked, says, is that also a benefit? No wonder she didn't even look around the new pharmacy and left quickly. Slack says the conditions for the exclusive pharmacist are written in the contract. Haley says the contract copy has already arrived. Haley says let's see, premium medical benefits, long-term leave, assignment of assistant pharmacist and personal maid, etc. The conditions are better than she expected. Slack asks if she checked the back as well. Haley asks the back? What more good conditions could there be on the back? It's written quite briefly. This contract takes effect immediately upon signing and is specified as a lifetime contract. Haley asks, what is this? She screams, what is this all about? Haley shakes and says, a lifetime contract. This is no different from a slavery contract. She must go to His Majesty immediately to protest. Slack asks if she signed the contract without even checking it. Haley says yes, at that time she had no choice. The maid was shocked and says 5,000 gold? What is this absurd contract fee? Haley says, Sesha? How long have you been there? The maid says she came in because she heard loud voices outside. By the way, is this amount even reasonable? This is an amount she can't earn even if she works her entire life. With this much, you can easily buy a house. It's enough to buy an estate. Haley dreams about an estate? Sesha says that she has really hit the jackpot. Haley says that in that case she'll have to think about it a bit though. Sesha says to Haley to look at this. She made a strong appeal to the tailor and got it for her. It's made of high-quality silk fabric that softly shines, with golden thread decorations embroidered one by the Imperial Palace craftsman. Now that she has become the personal pharmacist, she should wear something like this. Haley says Sesha she thought she ran away because she didn't want to organize the luggage. It turns out she brought this instead. Sesha asks if she heard that she became a personal maid. Haley says yes, but why hasn't a new assistant pharmacist been assigned? Sesha asks is it easy to find someone with the skills and trust? In that sense Haley is actually quite amazing. She became an assistant pharmacist at a young age and now she's the full-time pharmacist. Haley asks really? She thinks to herself that she turned out to be quite an impressive person. With benefits like this for a high position a lifetime contract might not be so bad? Haley says then Sesha could she help her with organizing this? Sesha says that she has a lot to do so she'll be off. Haley gets pissed off and looks around saying when will she ever finish organizing all this stuff? Well, since it's come to this, what choice does she have? She'll have to organize bit by bit. And take another look at the information of Haley. Haley puts her head down and says finally the organizing is done. Sesha, she'll meet her when she meets her. But she did find out one thing from all the hard work. Among all the experimental contents, one name keeps coming up frequently. She hasn't met them since she possessed, so they are not a colleague or acquaintance. Haley has this thought and asks herself if could it be the secret relationship she's in? This is problematic. She might end up as a tragic heroine who lost her memory. Should she practice tearful acting just in case? A knocking is heard and Haley asks herself who could it be at this late hour. A piece of paper is slid in and Haley says that's it. Late at night someone secretly slipped it through the crack in the door. They must be having a secret love affair. Let's see. Experiment phase 2 successful? Wait a minute, this handwriting is? Haley slams open the door and she says to herself that it's the same handwriting as on that note. They're already gone. Who could have left it? Haley didn't think much of the last note. Could she be an accomplice? She shuts the door and says that in that case, Laventia who took the truth serum would have immediately told His Majesty her name. In that case there might be something hidden in the note. Believe it or not, she used to read quite a lot of mystery novels. If she shines and note this over the campfire. What, she can't see anything, huh? Haley notices something on her wrist and says it doesn't look like a tattoo. The writing is so strange she can't read it. It wasn't there before but it suddenly appeared. What is this? Woman's identity. At this time like this, she would like to clear her mind with some fresh air. The Emperor says they meet again. Haley. Haley says that she forgot that His Majesty takes walks at night. The Emperor says that the new clothes suit her well. It seems she likes the terms of the contract. Haley says that she wanted to rush to His Majesty right away, but the money held her back. The Emperor says that she's more transparent than he thought when it comes to money. Now he knows how to handle her. Haley says really? Then she'll be off. The Emperor asks surely she's not planning to leave him so soon, right? Haley says oh no. Of course not. It's such an honor to meet with His Majesty. The Emperor says then let's have a chat, come and sit next to me. Haley thinks to herself that it's nerve-wracking to have a one-on-one conversation. Haley says tonight the night air is chilly. The Emperor says is it? He feels a bit hot. Haley says that he doesn't look well. Is he feeling sick? The Emperor groans in pain and says hot. Haley says his body is extremely hot. She'll call the royal physician right away. The Emperor says it's fine, don't make a fuss. Haley notices that those red eyes, it's the sign of an outburst starting. What should she do? She hasn't made a suppressant yet. Haley asks Your Majesty, are you okay? As he puts his head on her shoulder telling her to just stay like this for a moment. Haley says to herself that he's too close. She can hear His Majesty's breathing. The Emperor says but strangely it's cooling down. Where her body touches his. Haley says to herself that today she made it quite quickly. Since being possessed she has been working non-stop. She can't just stand by when the Emperor is in such pain. Haley tells him that she'll go make the medicine, so please return to her chamber. She asks Your Majesty, but he has already fallen asleep on her shoulder. She says to herself that no matter how much it hurts, her heart almost stopped from fear. It's a good thing Slack arrived just in time. If not, her heart would have burst. She still can't make the suppressant, but this should suffice, right? Haley says, Your Majesty, the pharmacist is here, and the Emperor tells them to let her in. She thinks to herself that this room is filled with the Emperor's heat. The Emperor asks if she brought the medicine. Haley says, yes. This is an antipyretic and the white one is a sleeping pill. She also brought a tonic to help boost his energy. The Emperor says that it seems her memory is coming back. Haley says not quite, but she's getting used to it quickly. The Emperor says he sees, but it seems more necessary for her than him. Haley asks herself if she has dark circles. She has been overworking lately. Haley says she's fine, so please just try it. The Emperor says right now the only thing that helps him is the suppressant. This isn't a fever. It's the instinct of a beast. Haley asks if she heard wrong. The Emperor says when he goes berserk he can't control his body. His ability is used to protect the borders, so he can't stop and the periods of berserk are short. Just give him the sleeping pill that will help somewhat. Haley thinks to herself that even while in pain she must continue using her power. Being an emperor is not for everyone. But soon, because Joshua will appear. The small group with these abilities, espers, and the guides who can calm the berserks caused by these abilities. An esper's berserk state can be controlled through contact with a guide, and the more intimate the contact the more effective it is. The day he'll be guided by Joshua is not far off. Haley says that he'll meet a good guide soon. The Emperor says a guide. He doesn't trust anyone, especially those who evoke ambiguous emotions like guides. Haley thinks to herself, right, this person had a distrustful nature. The Emperor says and his brother chose death because of a guide. Haley asks if he had a brother. The Emperor says didn't she know? Before he ascended to the throne, the crown prince wasn't him. Haley thinks to herself that he's always been smart. The Emperor says his brother was smart and kind-hearted, but like other espers he fell in love with his guide. However, their meeting was doomed from the start. That guide cruelly betrayed his brother. The shock drove him insane, and he eventually chose to end his life. At least he won't die for such trivial reasons. Haley thinks to herself that's why he's obsessed with the suppressant. That would make him unable to trust people. Haley says that person must have been very precious to His Majesty. The Emperor stays quiet but then says they were someone who seemed to shine just by standing still. So make it for him. He doesn't have to doubt or be wary of. A perfect suppressant that. Haley thinks to herself that she wishes she could make it right away if she could. The Emperor says by the way the medicine's effect is, he can feel like he can finally rest. Haley asks if she should leave now. The Emperor holds her hand saying to please stay by his side for a moment. Haley, you are cool. Haley thinks to herself that it's awkward, why does he keep holding her hand since a while ago? Haley asks if she should bring a cool towel. Your Majesty? He has already fallen asleep. By the way, why is a sleeping person's grip so strong? She guesses she can't go back like this. Today he seems uncharacteristically weak, Your Majesty, considering he even shared his story. Haley sits beside him saying alright. She'll stay for just an hour and then leave. The scene cuts to Damien saying, brother, how do guides come about? The brother aims and says, well, one day like this arrow, there will be someone who pierces your heart. Damien says, someone who pierces his heart? The brother pats Damien and says he'll find out soon. Damien. The Emperor wakes up asking if this was a dream? An old memory. When did he fall asleep? Until just before he slept it felt like his body was burning with pain. But after sleeping he feels strangely refreshed. He didn't take the suppressant. How did this happen? Damien looks beside his bed and spots her and thinks to himself if she nursed him all night? Hold on, every night he spent with this woman. The pain always disappeared. Could it be that this woman? The Emperor thinks to himself that he has never spoken about his brother to anyone first. What made him finally open his mouth? At first he was just interested in her reactions, which were amusing to him. But why does she keep bothering him? Is it the anticipation for the suppressant she will make, or is it because she's his guide? The Emperor says no, it's too early to be certain with just the circumstances so far. He needs to observe the situation a bit more. The maid says, is she now showing her true colors? She fell asleep in His Majesty's bedroom again. Haley says, but she came back alive. Haley thinks to herself that when she woke up she was alone, but this time she wasn't dragged away. Was he touched by her sincere care yesterday? But yesterday His Majesty's brother's story, and he didn't know much about her true identity. To survive here she needs to gather more information. Haley says, Sesha, is there any way to learn more about the royal family? Sesha says, of course. Finally the pharmacist shows interest in this world. Haley asks, this world? Sesha says, but nothing is free. She needs to do this once a week. As she makes a gesture of money. Haley says to not worry about that. All she has right now is money. She thinks to herself that the maid makes these kinds of things together. Today's hot issues is the news of Grand Duke Aries' victory.